Welcome to the Elokus channel. This is class number 5 in the discourse Vayichan Shom Yisroel, the third discourse in the book B'Shosh Ekdimu. Altogether, it's class 51. We're holding a middle chapter 9. And here we go, Perek Tes. So I'm just uploading. You're going to have 2 classes uploaded today for those that are with me on the upload. Is I'm traveling this week. I'm not sure my level of reception. I'm going to try to continue doing classes, but I just wanted to leave you with an extra class here, just in case you don't hear from me for a few days. I'm not sure the level if I'm going to have upload ability where I'm going to be. So for that reason, don't give up on the channel if you don't have it. If a couple of days go by and I'm not there, I am planning to be back. And again, I hope I'm able to do it with the clear enough upload abilities from wherever I am. Okay, thank you. So in the last class, we were learning how the kalim, the vessels, are completely considered something new, and that's because they don't have a direct line connecting them to the Or Ein Sof. From the Or Ein Sof itself, we said there's a tzimtzum in between, a contraction in between. From the from the Rishimu, we said the way Rishimu, since it's a hidden power, the way it influences is only in a manner of not in a manner of dveikus, not in a state of attachment. And then finally, this is what we're learning right now, even for the practical flow of the energy that flows open from the kav, which the kav seems to be opening up a line of communication that would seem to attach point A and point B, which would be the kalim of Atzilus with the Or Ein Sof. He says, even over here, there is this mystical concept of a collision taking place between the Or Yashar and the Or Chayzer, between the forward light and the rebounding light. They collide. When they collide, the collision allows for the letters, the words that are hidden in the light, to fall. And once it falls, from these fallen letters, that's what brings about these fallen letters produce the kalim. So much we know already right now that the production of the vessels is not with an unbroken chain. It is unpurposely discussed. It intentionally has to have a breaking in the middle, something interfering in the pathway between the Or Ein Sof and the kalim. And as the reason is very simple, as we discussed earlier, because if Or Ein Sof would be in direct contact with the kalim, then the kalim could never be kalim, because the Or Ein Sof's non-definition would as when that is felt, it's impossible to have defining borders. That's the basic idea. But over here, he's going to explain, what does this mean, a collision? The collision of lights produces. So here is already, see, what we learned till now in this whole idea was pure Kabbalah. Now comes Chassidus. And Chassidus gives understanding from the human experience of what this means, a collision of two lights as they collide. And so brings in the Maamor. It's explained elsewhere. This is by way of example. When you have two opposite seichel, two opposite concepts, of two people learning. Okay, so you and your chavrusa are learning. Chavrusa is a Torah study partner. You're learning. You're trying to figure something out. You're learning a difficult passage of the Tosfos, difficult commentary on Talmud, or even the Talmud itself, or you're learning Chumash and Rashi, or Rambam, whatever it is you're studying. You're learning, and you reach an impasse. Both study partners are silent. Each one is deep in their thought, trying to come up with an idea, trying to come up with an insight that will open up the subject matter, that will resolve the questions. And suddenly one of them jumps up and says, I got it. Okay? And he offers his explanation. The concept is rich, it's powerful, it's shining. The guy's all excited when he's transmitting it. The other person is listening and listening and listening. And then challenges it with a good question. when the study partner challenges it and basically shoots it down. Says, well, if this would be the explanation, then how come over here and here it says so, and this doesn't fit? It contradicts directly another passage of the Mishnah, and therefore your reasoning is faulty. Well, the guy's a little upset. Yeah, he was so excited he had such a good explanation, and he was going to resolve the whole subject. Now he's back to the drawing board because he knocked off his suggestion, his brilliant insight or explanation was now shot out. He shot a missile and took it right out. Okay, so it exploded. It's out. Doesn't have it anymore. But he's not willing to give up on the whole concept. He still feels there's truth to the way he was thinking. He's just got a problem. So after thinking for a while and analyzing the challenge that the other person gave him, he makes a comeback. He comes back with the idea a second time, but he tweaks it. And it's not as broad as he was initially saying. In other words, initially he was like going to have a concept that was very broad. But if it would be so broad, it gets stuck. It hits against that particular something other piece of information that contradicts it. So he has to narrow the concept that he can slip the concept through, and it doesn't, and it's not brushing up against that Mishnah or that it's not interfering. It's not gonna. So, and now it will work. It will work. After back and forth, they discuss it. Yeah, the concept that he presented originally was a good concept, but it was taken a little too far. It was a little too expansive. And that's why it didn't fit with so and so. So now, once we've taken care of and that's why it was knocked down. It was shut down. But afterwards, when you come back to it and you narrowed it a little bit and shrunk it a little bit and made it a little bit more contained, so now it's not in contradiction with so and so. It fits and it's good. Now, the second version is an offshoot of the first version, but it's smaller. It's not as broad as it in a sense. It could have been. It's not always the case. Sometimes when you challenge and knock something down, you give up on whatever you tried, and you come back with a much deeper explanation. That's a different. That can happen many times, and an even more expansive concept that's discussed in Chassidus as well. But here we're talking in a case when you don't do that, you're still holding on to the original idea. You're just, cutting off the corners, making it slimmer, making it narrower, so it's not going to get in the way of this and this particular point or this thing. So this he uses as the example of a collision. The two minds, the two lights. Remember, we're saying there's the direct light, there is the rebounding light collide. So this is the idea. The first scholar who offered the explanation, that's the initial light. He's shooting forth light from his mind. He shoots forth a light. The light is traveling to his study partner. Study partner receives the light and challenges it, bounces back a concept, a question. The rebounding light is kind of shooting back based on what you're saying. It's hitting an obstacle and it's going back towards, you're knocking the idea back, and exactly how it works, but the two ideas, or it could be even more so that it's not like the second guy just shoots down the first idea. It's that the second person offers their own explanation. And the two ideas are clashing with each other. One sees it this way, and one sees it this way, and there's the pros and the cons for this one and that one. But in the end, it's enough to take down the original presentation that Chavrusa A, that the first scholar presented. Now, so that's called the Or Yashar and the Or Chayzer colliding. When it says the letters fall, the letters falling means the idea collapsed. But when you go back to the fundamental pieces of that broken idea, you pick it up again and you try to piece it together again, and you're going to create now a smaller concept. That's the idea that says in Kabbalah that from the broken letters that fell from the collision, now you can create the vessels. The vessels are a much smaller idea. The hidden letters that were in remember when we were learning earlier, the hidden letters, the Oisius Rishimu, the letters of the Rishimu that are inside the Kav, they're so that's very, 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 very expansive, very high, very, very deep, very hidden, but very, 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 very big and very enormous, very close to the Orient Sof. That's the idea. It's still representing the Koach HaGvul, the power of limitation, while it's part of the Orient Sof. The clashing of it, the knocking it down, produces something. On the one hand, it's coming from that, but on the other hand, it's of much lesser quality than what it was before. And that's the Kalim. The Kalim are of much lesser quality than the Oisius Arishimu while they were inside the Kav, and definitely while they were initially revealed by the Tzimtzum. So it's been downgraded, just like the concept that scholar A had presented has been dramatically downgraded by it being shot down by a question, although you're now representing that idea, it's a much lesser concept. Let's read it inside. Basically, we have an example of two opposite ideas. Shall beis loimdim, of two people studying, that have a pilpul. Pilpul means a back and forth intellectual discussion, and question one questions the other. What happens after the back and forth, what is born from their dialogue, from each one presenting arguments and counter arguments, it produces hasaga v'svara chadasha, an understanding and a new concept that both of them didn't have. In other words, they work it out and then they come up with kind of a compromised idea, which has been worked out from between both of them, that has not been the original idea that each one thought, but there are traces of it. Maybe the new concept has little pieces of both sides, of both of the scholars. Or maybe it's just a tailored version of the first scholar, however we're going to see it. And that's what it seems to imply now in the second part that he's saying now. Through the challenge, the question that one of them asked the other, in which he contradicts the understanding of the other fellow. So this brings about a new concept, a new understanding, to resolve, and to substantiate his initial thesis. He presented a thesis, an idea, but as we said before, it was challenged. Now he's not willing to give up on it. He goes back to it, saves it by maybe trimming it a little bit here and there, shrinking it a little bit, and now it's more. It can endure, and nothing will, and it won't be challenged. Well, the idea that I'm saying it's a shrunken idea is what he's saying over here. And since it came about through the taking down, the undoing, and the nullification of his intelligence and of his reasoning. So the new emerged baby idea, this new concept that is now emerging, is considered a smaller concept in comparison to the essence of the initial emergence that emerged at the beginning. For behold, sometimes you don't have anybody contradicting. You say a mind-blowing chiddush, it's so wow, it has no one can stand against it. Brilliant. So then it holds. But a lot of times, from one concept, and you think about it for a while, it produces another concept. Because that's the way things work. From ideas give birth to other ideas. Since that new idea B, which was born out of idea A, came about not through a negation of concept A, but rather through a further development of concept of concept A. So then concept B will be as big, as enormous, and as great as concept A. But when in order to create concept B, concept A needed to be, was challenged, was knocked down, was questioned, then the new concept that is born is going to be of a lesser power. If his fellow would not have, his friend, his study partner, would not have contradicted it, this was not born. It was born because it was taken down. That's why it is a smaller idea. It's a lesser idea. That's where he's adding in this idea that we mentioned earlier. If it would have been born without a contradicting argument, and he would come to another understanding from his first understanding. In other words, the first understanding would lead to a second understanding, but without the first understanding crashing. Then the second idea would be as great as the first idea. But the first comprehension, but the second comprehension, which came about through the taking down, and the falling of the first presentation, the first understanding. So that makes the second understanding usually being smaller, more narrow, more limited, and the like. As explained elsewhere at great length. And this is all serving as a metaphor, an example from the human experience to the divine. When the vessels of Atzilus come about, when the direct light and the rebounding light have a collision with each other, they contradict each other. The letters fall. This would be metaphoric to the falling, the collapsing of the first idea. That's what it means. The pieces that are inside there kind of get when it gets blown up, when the whole idea gets blown up, then the pieces of it become separated. In this case, these becomes these fallen letters. And this is what brings about the vessels. And what's the vessels? The vessels are a very, very poor leftovers, if you might say, a poor what was the word I'm looking for? A poor survival, if you might say, of the initial Oirais HaReshimu, of the Oisiais HaReshimu, the lights of the Reshimu. Shazeu Kamaya, as he says, Shazeu Kamaya Saga Katana. This new the vessels is like the new idea, Shanasa Yadena Hanafila, which came about through the falling, Maasagasai, from the initial concept, She'ena Be'erachai Saga Kodemas, which cannot be compared to the first concept of the first idea. Harei, so what do you see from here? That the coming about of the vessels from the letters that are in the lights is not in a state of closeness. Meaning it's not, so when I said if it comes about through a collision, it hasn't been in any way. Point A and point B are really not connected. It's not in a state of closeness. It's through a folding of the letters that's in them, which creates separation and distance. And as it's been explained earlier in the 8th chapter, and he's referencing what we discussed earlier in the class, the letters that are in the light, the hidden letters that are in the light, which needed to get broken in order for them to fall, and from them you can create the vessels. It's the idea of the thickness of the light that comes from the Reshimu. So the Reshimu, which is the power of the power of Gavul, the power of limitation that's in the Or Ein Sof, it imparts, when the Kav passes through it, it picks up on these limiting elements. These traces of limitation go into the Kav. The Kav on its own would be infinite light. because it's passing through this, it's kind of picking up the notion of these limitations. But without a collision, it is so far from limitation, even from the Kalim of Atzilus. It could never produce the Kalim of Atzilus. In order to be able to take these thickness of the light and to separate it from the light itself, because the brightness of the light doesn't allow you to see the thick, hidden particles in the light. Now, however, when because of the light being contradicted and blocked, this is what causes these, you might say, the letters that are in the light, which is the thickening elements of the light of the Rishimu, to fall down and produce the Kalim. Based on that, we can understand, and this is what we say, that Chachma, which is the first Keli, the first vessel in Atzilus, the most superior vessel of the container in the world of Atzilus, it's considered it comes into existence from nothing, which means it doesn't have a history. It's something new. What do you mean? It comes from the Rishimu, it comes from the Kav, it comes from the Or Ein Sof. Now we understand. Because in order for it to be produced as the Kalim of Chachma, even the Keli of Chachma, which is the most subtle of all Kalim, but it too is already a limitation. And for it to come into existence, there has to be such a separation on all levels, like we discussed till now. This is the vessel of Chachma, the Hisavusa, it's coming into being. Is in a manner of incomparability. This is considered something from nothing. And so it is true. All the vessels. If it's true about Chachma, it's for sure true about Bina, which is understanding, and Chesed, kindness, and Gavura, and the like, and all the Kalim of the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Kitzer. Let's do a little Kitzer over here. Summary. And this is the reason why Atzilus is considered Ein Aroch, incomparable. I know HaKelim is referring to the vessels. The Hisavusam al Yedei Tzimtzum. Number one, if you want to measure them and relate them to the Or Ein Sof himself, for sure there is a blockage. It comes about through the Tzimtzum. The Gama Chayah Shebehem, and the second idea that we discussed earlier, and even their Chayas, the life, Misharsham Shebehem Misharsham HaRishimu, which is in the Kalim, there is embedded life over there that comes from the source in the Rishimu. The Hain, and these are Hazayin Shemos, the 7 names of God. Even that is not in a direct contact with the Rishimu. Hadei bebchenas richuk. It is in a state of richuk, as we discussed in last class. They're in a state of they're far, like a nitzutz, like a spark that's separated from its source. Elachenehem helim. And that's why the life that's in it is in a very concealed state. So much so, we say about it that it's kegufa b'lo nishmasa, like a body without a soul. And the third part, which we discussed today in this class, the games savusa mina or, and even they're coming into existence in the literal sense in which the light, the light of the kav gets involved, is from the collision, from the banging in of the direct light and the rebounding light, which causes shenoiflim oisiyos, which causes letters to collapse and to fall. And we gave an example on that. And because it's falling, again, it means that there's an aspect of disconnect. The nefila and falling, ubchenas richuk, is called distance. When something falls, it's not connected to the place from where it fell from. It becomes disconnected. So this is like a separation. So with this, he concludes this idea that the Kalim are not in a continuation. Yud, let's lead it just a few lines further. V'hagamen, even though the be'emes gama Kalim da'atzilus. And even though, based on this, we might think, okay, that means that the Kalim of Atzilus are completely disconnected. They've come about through on every angle, they're through a separation. So it would mean that it's completely not God. And yet these Kalim, we say about them, that God is one with them. So how do we reconcile that? Vagam de be'emes. And even though in truth, the whole world of Atzilus is above creation. It's not a creation yet. Gama Kalim da Atzilus. Even the vessels of Atzilus and Bechenas Atzilus are in a state of Atzilus. Not that, okay, and remember earlier we said the real meaning of Atzilus means it is something that was hidden in the potential and now came into revelation. And on that we say Kalim doesn't have this feature. You can't say that in the Or Ein Sof were these Kalim, because the Kalim are so new. However, from the idea that Atzilus is considered divine, that idea, and it's not considered creation, that applies even to the Kalim. Sharei Elokus Mamish, they're literally Elokus. Nevertheless, we have to realize the narrow definition in this, that we say that the Kalim of Atzilus are called Elokus. The Kalim, the Elokus of the vessels, Ein ze b'chinas hispashtus Elokai, or it's not the expansion of God Himself, so to speak. Dahainu, huspashtus ha'ora ma'or ein sof. It's not a expansion of a ray of the Or Ein Sof, like where there is a continuum flow from God Himself into His light, and from His infinite light into the tentacles, so to speak, like these to say that Hashem flows, He Himself is flowing through narrow channels. It's all one continuum energy. No, that's we say about the Kav, and that we say about the Oiros. They're like one continuum of the Or Ein Sof. Ma'or Ein Sof Hamatzil, from the Or Ein Sof, the infinite one, the emanator, b'pchinas giloy, in a manner of revelation. It's not that way. But rather it is still Elokus, divine, but it comes b'pchinas havdalah, in a state of separation, v'richuk, and distance. But hold it, if it becomes separated, then it's something new. So he's going to give an example of something that's separated, but it's not new. And what's that? A spark. Just like a spark that became separated from the big fire, from the big blaze. In its substance, it's the substance of fire, literally. It's nothing new. It comes from the essence of the avuka, is the big flame. But nevertheless, it's separated from the big fire. The Einoi Meir, and it's not shining, and it's not like the blazing fire of the avuka itself, which is all attached to the coals. It's all attached to the whatever it is, to the you're holding a lantern or whatever it is. It's all attached to that shemeir that's shining. The same is about the Kalim. Shemelakus mamish, they're literally divine. Shenetzal, they are emanations mipchinas atzmus Or Ein Sof, from the substance of the Or Ein Sof. Mipchinas koyach hagavul shabo, from the power of limitation that's in the Or Ein Sof. Like we discussed, the main source of the Kalim is the letters of the Rishimu, which the Rishimu are the power of the gavul, the limited power of the Or Ein Sof. Nevertheless, it comes in a manner of separation from the essence. Like the Sefer, the Kabbalistic Sefer, the Rakanti, says, regarding the 10 Sephiros, the Ma'oroi HaGadol, that from God's great light, His noitzitzu HaKelim, it sparkled the vessels. Oiroi HaGadol is the infinite light, the Or Ein Sof. How does he connect the vessels to them? His noitzitzu, like sparks. In his noitzitzu, what does it mean? His noitzitzu sparking. It's not like a continuation like Atzilus itself, which we would apply to the lights of Atzilus. It's like when Moshe is projecting his light onto the Zekanim, onto the elders. That's a light, a radiant light that's still connected to the source, like a flame that's connected to the coal. When you use the term, see, every word of the Kabbalist is accurate. He uses the word "isnoitzitzutz," hu sheba b'b'chinas havdalah, comes in a state of separation. We can say that the concept of this isnoitzitzutz, hu ke'inyan nefilas ha'oisiyos. It's like the idea, like the letters falling. It's the same letters that's in the light, but it falls. It means it separates. Through the banging in of the direct light and the rebounding light that we said earlier. The alkain, and therefore, even though they're literally a lakus, the divinity. The Hashem zanikra atzilus, That's why it's called Atzilus. Yet, it is Makoma Kamareo Bebchinas. I'm skipping all the parentheses here for now. Makoma Kamareo Gam Kem Bebchinas Yesh Meyayin. They're still considered something from nothing. Mipnei Shehem Bebchinas Gvul. They are in a state of limitation. She'ein aroich legaba oirein sof habli gvul. That have no comparison in at all to the oirein sof that is bli gvul, that is infinite. V'savusam, and they're coming into being, ubederach ein aroch, is in a matter of no comparison to him. We'll stop over here. As a Hashem, we shall continue.